Hey, hey, hey.
Which also, it has been almost a week since the NBA trade deadline concluded, and I feel like at this point, the dust has pretty much settled around the NBA. We've had so many think pieces about Luka Doncic and Jimmy Butler and De'Aaron Fox all switching teams. I am here now to shine a light on some of these smaller guys who also changed places and will also be having an impact on their team for the rest of the season and for the foreseeable future. So I put together a list of 9 guys, and we'll be starting with DeAndre Hunter, who was moved from the Atlanta Hawks to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Caris LeVert, Georges Niang, 2 first-round picks, and 3 second-round picks. So the Cavs essentially finally get that wing that they have so desperately been wanting. They pretty much just take Caris LeVert, Georges Niang, combine them, and upgrade them for the cost of, again, 2 firsts and 3 seconds. DeAndre Hunter has been having a breakout year. He's finally looking like the player that we were promised way back when he got drafted out of Virginia. He is scoring the ball amazingly off the bench. Obviously, now with Cleveland, he's going to slot right into that starting wing spot and will complete this young core and complete the starting lineup. I think what interests me most about this trade is that the Cleveland Cavaliers now have a really solid core of top 6 players who are under contract for this season and at least the next 2 with Garland, Mitchell, Hunter, Allen, Strus, and Mobley. They're all under 30 years of age as well, so there is plenty of time for them to continue to grow together. Next up, we will be talking about the Luka trade, but I want to focus specifically on Max Christie, who went to the Dallas Mavericks in this deal alongside Anthony Davis. And again, I just think there were so many people focused on the Luka AD aspect of this trade that a lot of people joked at the time when this trade was announced that, oh, there's gonna be the NBA nerds talking about how Max Christie's a steal. And I'd hate to say it, but he really is a steal for the Mavericks. And I can completely understand that Mavericks fans probably don't want to talk about this trade anymore. Your team got screwed by the owners, by management, and it's going to take a really long time for them to recover, if they ever will recover. But if I did have to introduce one small silver lining, it's the fact that Max Christie has been absolutely balling in this new opportunity. Since being traded to the Mavericks, he's averaging 17 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. He's doing that on some pretty insane shooting efficiency numbers, 51% from the field, 58% from 3. Obviously, it's not going to hold up, but just the fact that you can have this guy like Christie, who he hasn't started any of his 4 games since joining the Mavericks, but he has been finishing them over guys like Klay Thompson and PJ Washington, which I think speaks for itself of how great he has been playing. He's only 21 years old. He should have a bright future ahead of him. And again, the trade sucked, but you did at least get someone who could be a very elite role player down the line. Now, the next trade we're going to talk about is the Jimmy Butler trade. And again, like I said at the start of the video, we're not talking about Jimmy Butler specifically, but there were so many moving pieces in this one deal that there are a few hidden gems in there. Really quickly, starting with the Pistons, they add Dennis Schroeder as kind of just a cap filler guy to make the trade work, but I do think he will serve as a nice little bench point guard. That's always been where Schroeder's been at his best, and even though he has bounced around on a whole lot of teams, he'll be a nice veteran addition. Most importantly, he will help get the ball out of Cade Cunningham's hands, and he's someone who can actually do stuff with the ball, create shot for himself and for other teammates. Because without Jaden Ivey this season, the Pistons have been severely lacking in that field. The workload for Cade Cunningham has been way too heavy. He's been doing a great job at playing well and managing it, but at a certain point, he is going to need more help. And Dennis Schroeder, as washed as he may be, can help with that. I also really like the Heat getting Davion Mitchell in this deal. They were just in desperate need of an actual point guard this trade deadline because Terry Rozier has been pretty terrible since coming to the Miami Heat. I think most people are aware of that. And Mitchell has been a very interesting player throughout his career so far because obviously had the really nice rookie season with Sacramento after they drafted him 9th for absolutely no reason. But he earned his nickname Off Night because he was a great defensive player. He earned himself 27 minutes a game, was a big part of the rotation. Then over the next 2 seasons, kind of just disappeared from the NBA as he was slowly played more and more out of the rotation. He ends up in Toronto at the start of the season and actually ends up being a very solid backup point guard who had to start a lot of games because Emmanuel quickly has been injured for about 90% of the season. And overall, he still remains just a very solid defender. He is great with the ball in his hands, has had a lot of games where he has been the leading assist guy on the Raptors. And I think what works well is the fact that he plays alongside guys like Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett, who are more of the primary ball handlers on the team. So you don't necessarily have Davion Mitchell starting at point guard in the traditional sense, but he is a defensive first guy who can shoot league average from beyond the 3 point line. He's not going to wow you in that area. But most importantly, I think he fits right in with the Heat because, again, he is going to be a defensive first point guard who can help out some of the ball handling stuff while Tyler Harrow and Bam Adebayo handle most of the action in that area. Plus, again, at the end of the day, as long as he plays better than Terry Rozier in that starting point guard spot, then this is a win for the Heat, and I don't think that'll be very hard for him to do. And last player in this trade I want to talk about, KJ Martin going to the Utah Jazz. You're starting to have a nice little breakout season for the Philadelphia 76ers. Ultimately got hurt and then was traded as he was one of the only tradable contracts that they had, and I was really happy when he first ended up in Detroit after the initial trade because I thought he would just be an awesome little lob threat and bench forward for Cade Cunningham to work with. Then he ends up in Utah, where I think he will be a really nice front court piece next to Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler. He's also still very young. I believe he's either 24 or 25, so he is fitting that timeline out in Utah where everyone is just really young. He's shown ability to stretch the floor in the past. I don't know if that will carry with him to Utah, but regardless, just a really nice young piece to add to this young roster essentially for free. Then we'll stick with the Sixers real quick because I think they actually made a lot of really nice small moves. Starting with getting Jared Butler and a bunch of seconds for Reggie Jackson first, and then they also went out and got Quentin Grimes for Caleb Martin. Starting with Jared Butler, I know that the stats aren't crazy if you go look at them, but at least just watching him eye test, he is just one of those guys who always seems to be making the right play at the right time. And it is a mystery to me that he's already played for 4 NBA teams in his career. I know he had the weird injury thing coming out of the draft, but he is not someone who should be bouncing around the league like this. In fact, as I'm recording this video right now, the Sixers are playing the Raptors and he has 15, 4 and 4 off the bench and has been one of the best players in the game for the Sixers. And I think what makes me hurt the most about this deal is that the Sixers were willfully employing guys like Reggie Jackson and Kyle Lowry while they could have just gone out and gotten Jared Butler like last offseason. And I feel like he just they would have just been a better team because of it. But at the end of the day, if they do not convert his contract from a two-way to a standard by the end of the season, then I have officially lost all hope in the Sixers. And there's the Quentin Grimes deal, which Nico Harrison just continues to amaze me at cutting costs and cutting corners as Quentin Grimes is a restricted free agent this offseason. They didn't want to pay him, so they went out and got Caleb Martin, who's making a little bit more but is locked down on contract for the next 4 seasons as he just signed with the 76ers. And regardless of that stuff, Quentin Grimes, in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people share this opinion, he's just the better basketball player right now. He's the better shooter, he's the better defender, not quite as big and physical as Caleb Martin, but I think Quentin Grimes will be a really great fit for the Sixers moving forward. You can play him alongside Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain once he's healthy. You can play him with Paul George, you can play him with Embiid, and he's just going to be a really nice complement. Not to mention the fact that he has just been he had been balling for the Mavericks this season. Now, some other names I'm going to rattle off a little quicker because I feel like I've been recording for way too long. But Cody Martin to the Suns, they dump Yusuf Nurkic, which was huge for them getting off of that contract. It took him a first round pick, but they get back Cody Martin. He has low-key dealt with a lot of injury stuff in the past, but had a really good 2022 season where he played 26 minutes a night, shot 38% from three, was a good defender. Then again, dealt with a whole bunch of knee and ankle issues. But finally, this season is starting to get back. The 3-point percentage is slowly climbing. He's back to being great on the defensive end, and at the very least, he is just another wing that they can add to the rotation, which the Suns have been desperately needing. Then Jake LaRavia is another guy where the stats are not going to show anything crazy, but he's been a really solid player for the Memphis Grizzlies. He is only 23 years old. He is a 6'8" forward who has the chance to become a really elite role player at some point in his career. And the main reason why this one is important is because the Sacramento Kings have desperately needed some size off of their bench because outside of Trey Lyles, they have been taking multiple shots on guys like Jay Crowder and Doug McDermott to be their wings off the bench. It's even gotten so bad that Spotrac has Keon Ellis listed as a small forward, despite the fact that he is very much a guard. So again, LaRavia is a very important pickup and should be seeing a whole bunch of minutes off the bench for the rest of the season. Now, the one unfortunate thing with him is there was some weird. The Grizzlies declined his fourth-year option with them, so because of that, he is an unrestricted free agent this offseason, which is unfortunate for the Kings because that makes it a lot harder for them to re-sign him. And that now brings me to the last, just the entire team that I want to talk about at this deadline because I mentioned at the top of the video that a lot of these moves and trades I've talked about today are things that I liked, players that I like, teams that I think made great trades and had some nice ideas and were cooking at this deadline. But this last team that I'm going to talk about is a team that I think had perhaps one of the most disappointing trade deadlines for a team that is trying to contend. And that team is the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, they made two trades at this deadline. One was a big four-teamer involving Chris Middleton, Kyle Kuzma, which I'll get into. And then they had this one smaller trade where they got rid of Marjan Beauchamp for Kevin Porter Jr. And I really, I don't even know where to start. I know a lot of people didn't like the Kyle Kuzma edition, and I'm not here to talk about him, but I will say very briefly that at the end of the day, I think the third option Kuzma, who will be playing behind Giannis and Dame, will be a better version than the first option Kuzma that we have been seeing on the Wizards this year, no matter how terrible he has looked this year. But in this deal, so Chris Middleton unfortunately has a bunch of ankle surgeries this past offseason, just isn't quite the same player that he was for the Milwaukee Bucks. He's also a guy who has brought them a championship and was a very important piece in that championship. And they have now essentially salary dumped him to get under the second apron in favor of Kyle Kuzma. Perhaps the worst part of all about this trade is that they included AJ Johnson, who, if you're unaware, was the first round draft selection for the Milwaukee Bucks 2 drafts ago. And if you don't know who AJ Johnson is, I don't necessarily blame you because he has barely ever played for the Milwaukee Bucks, considering the fact that he's only 20 years old and he is very raw. He's a very raw talent, and he was drafted to be someone that was more of a project that the Milwaukee Bucks would hopefully develop, and maybe he'd help the team down the line. Just one season after they drafted him, they have now included him in a trade to again salary dump one of the all-time franchise favorite players, Chris Middleton. And this is just such incompetence from this Milwaukee Bucks front office to go out and draft a guy to be a project type player, hope to develop him, and then just give up on him 1 year into his career in an effort to again save some money with the taxes and again salary dump Chris Middleton. And the cherry on top of all of that is again the fact that they went out and also traded for Kevin Porter Jr., who on the court has been not great ever in his NBA career, was the one player on the Clippers who I just did not understand why they even had him on the roster, which is even to mention all of the off the court insanity that has gone on with Kevin Porter Jr. So I'm just so shocked at how terrible of a deadline this front office had. This front office being incompetent is a big reason why I just ultimately don't believe in the Milwaukee Bucks as a true contender in the NBA today. And I think it's a big reason why a whole bunch of other people also don't believe in this team. No matter how good Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo are able to backpack this absolute joke of a roster that they have put together. That's all I got for this one. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite moves of the NBA trade deadline were. Let me know what trade you think is going to have the biggest consequences, 5 years from now or 10 years from now or just any time in the future. As always, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. It would mean a lot to me, and I'll see y'all in the next one.